What I would like to talk to you about today is why is research important? Research, of course, brings along discovery and innovation. But in addition to these things, I think that research actually brings us joy to us human beings. Because I think that we, as human beings, we are born to wonder and to search and to share what we find. And I would like to this evening, I would just like to share my personal point of view as a researcher and why I enjoy doing this so much. I would like to divide the approach to research in 3 stages. It's wondering, searching, and sharing. Wondering is coming up with the question that you are wondering about. Looking around the world is full of questions. And then searching is, of course, looking for the answer, how to answer that question, but also searching for the way in which you want to approach that question. Your favorite topic actually is a fruit of the uniqueness of your life. And sharing, of course, the most important part, I think, it's because that's how what you find in answering your question, how you contribute to the society. And I would like to start with the first stage, which is wondering. As I said already before, the world is full of beautiful things. There are so many wonderful things that you look around and you come up with a question. I think that our question that we come up with is a fruit of our environment, our upbringing. So every one of us actually has our own questions, and we're going to approach it in a unique way. I, for example, am a Japanese. I grew up in Singapore, and I studied in London for university, and then I've been in Italy, in Milan and in Genova from my postgraduate onwards, which means that I was surrounded by different languages, different cultures, and different religions all my life. But what I've seen is that in a city, every city I've been in, it's made up of the people that are there at that very moment, whether it's tourists or the residents. That day in the city is made of every single individual that's there. When I was in school, when I first had learned in a biology lesson that when the oxygen that we breathe in is actually carried to every single cell in our body by the red blood cells in our blood, I started to look at my fingertips differently. How is it that these red blood cells are rushing through my blood to bring the oxygen to every part of my body? Actually, inside every cell in our body, proteins and RNAs, DNAs, they're all doing their jobs in every single part, their own, each unique functions in a very busy way. And I think a city functions that way too. And you will see that I will put this analogy quite closely later on as well. I would like to share just the kind of beautiful world that I've been able to come into contact with during my research. This is an animal called C. elegans. It's a microscopic worm. It's about the tip of your hair. It's about 1 millimeter long when it's an adult. You can almost see by naked eye if it's an adult. Just to show you the video of how it moves elegantly, it's called C. elegans for no specific reason other than I think it's the way it dances. And I was looking, for my PhD, I was looking at a family of proteins that bind to other proteins in this one specific organism. It's a very interesting model because it has all the nervous systems, reproductive system, intestines, and it's one of our favorite genetic model to study. Reading up on the proteins that I found in my PhD project, I came across a lot of neurons that were in neurons, and I fell in love with them. So then for my postdoctoral project, I ended up working on neurons from mouse. Right, let's see if Neurons are polarized cells, which means that there are 2 compartments, 2 poles. One is an axon, which you will see. It's this part here that is sending out signal. And these, on the other sides, are dendrites that are actually receiving signals from the other cells. I wanted to focus what is happening right at the tip of this axon. So I went on to look at 2 groups of proteins. There's one is called actin, colored in red, you see up here. And the other one is the one called microtubules or tubulin, which is marked in green on the slides. I'm not going to go into details because it's going to be quite boring and it's late in the afternoon. But just to say that we are able to actually see how the actins move in some of these situations. We mimic the situation that would be what we believe is the beginning of the Alzheimer's disease before symptoms are formed in a Petri dish, and we try to see what's happening to the actin. And we saw that the disease actually gets disrupted, and the neurons at the poles that I talked about, the axons and dendrites, they actually become not identifiable. They lose their identity. And that's what, at least we believe, from that project. Currently, I'm working on a completely different project, which is working on two different forms of one specific genes, and how that gene, we believe that it's has changed over evolution in human beings, in the modern human. And we think that this particular gene might be very important in how we process fat in our body. And these are actually the lipids that you see, the fat, the green blobs are actually the fat that you see in the cells. And we think that this gene might be, then this fat metabolism may be involved in some of our behaviors, like sleep and social interaction. So I said that the city is, inside the city, I imagine it like this. It's full of things going on. It's a nightmarish map. But what we do in our research is actually, I'm looking at a much simpler map, and what I want to do is just to understand what is going on between one station and another, and maybe not even the whole part. I'm only looking at maybe just this part, or even in the middle. And that's what a research project that I'm working on in. It's a very small area, but we all need to do our own little bit to be able to understand the whole map. The second stage, the scientific research for me is just the one way to approach our curiosity. I know that maybe looking inside of neuron, what is happening there is probably not everybody's cup of tea. They probably don't want to look at these things. That's my interest. For example, my husband, who is an engineer that builds robots, for him, of course, what is happening in neuron is one of the last things that he asks himself when he gets up for breakfast. Second stage of the research is searching. As I said, the more you dig in a research process, I think the more you find out, the more beautiful you find everything around it. There are so many more interesting things. You find all the things that you're wondering, but how can it be? I need to dig deeper to find more things. And there are layers and layers of things underneath that then starts to spread the whole information all around. It's a never-ending process, which is why I think research is so exciting, because it's never-ending. This brings me, you're probably wondering what this slide is doing right in the middle of my presentation. It's because this is what I found in my searching that happened in my life. Actually, I came to a combination of my favorite topic currently is the combination of music and science, and molecular genetics, to be specific. I was cooking a dinner one evening during my maternity leave, and I really missed being in touch with the research world because I've been at home. I decided to be home for 3 years until my son was at least 3 years old, because I think it's important. But I missed this world, so then I ended up looking for a podcast, which then, Alzheimer's disease, under the title of that, I found a podcast that was called Music and the Brain. And they talked about the power of music used in therapy by Dr. Alicia Clare and De Florio Lane, and also by an Italian music therapist in another program I found called Claudia Cremaschi, who talked about the power of music that has on people, that music can calm people's nerves. Some of the physiotherapists that are having problems in moving their legs can actually start to move their legs with the rhythm of the music. Deaf people can be treated to learn how to speak, to develop their language skills by hearing through their bones. This is not anything to celebrate anything macabre or Halloween or anything like this. It's more that you can hear the sound through the bones. And I thought Skeletons Dancing describes this quite well. And that the hearing is one of the first senses that gets stimulated while you're in the uterus. And So it's just a continuation of the learning process that already starts in utero. And I think this is a great approach. And the last part I need to share is this sharing part, that we are all actually sharing the concept. Why music is so powerful is because not just because we can understand things, communicate things, not just through vocabulary, but through sound that we can actually feel in our body. And the way the music can actually communicate is when we breathe together. When you're playing together, you're actually breathing the air together, and you're sharing the moments. When I was in school, this is actually a picture of an orchestra, but when I was in school in a string quartet, our teachers taught us to actually turn our backs together to each other and never look at each other but play. And that exercise, that afternoon, it was the first time ever that I actually realized you can play much better by breathing together. And I enjoyed every note and every moment. And I think when we're actually sharing scientific findings or even sharing our ideas, as we're doing right now in this TEDxMantova, is when we're sharing the moments, and we're actually sharing. We're biting onto the same concept and trying to breathe together and share the moment. I find that watching my son grow up, I realize that we're all born with curiosity. And I think it is so important that we actually educate them in a way that not that we educate them, we provide them the means so that they can access the ways for them to express their interests, not just through maths or science, but also through art and theater and music, so that they can choose the way in which they want to express their interest in, that they can find their own unique topic to work on. And of course, it is important to give them the time to be able to search the answers on what they're interested in, protect them, give them the safety so that they feel free to investigate. And of course, we should let them, and we should look forward to actually sharing what we find with our friends and people around us, so that we can critically share our ideas. Some of you will agree with me maybe, and some of you will not have agreed. And with your feedback, positive and negative, with critical analysis, critical sharing of our ideas, that's how we can grow as a society and to improve our society, and that's how the whole human species, if I may say, I think this is the way that we can bring our society forward. Thank you very much. Grazie per tutto.